Hey everyone, welcome back for another deep dive.
Glad to be back.
This time, we're tackling something that I think we all struggle with: information overload.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, how do we even know what's true anymore?
It's tough, especially nowadays with all the articles and opinions flying around.
Right. I mean, everyone's got a take, everyone's an expert, and it's like exhausting trying to sift through it all.
For sure.
So, luckily for us, we've got this really interesting article inspired by a video called Want to Know the Truth.
Hmm.
And it really gets into the nitty-gritty of how we can figure out what's actually true.
It's a good one.
I thought so too. And you know what really hooked me right off the bat was that first line. It says seeking truth isn't just some like philosophical thing. It's actually like the foundation of a good society.
Yeah, it's the bedrock.
Yeah, like if we can't agree on basic facts, how can we work together?
Exactly. How do we solve problems, make decisions, any of that?
Right. And the article makes this point that like humans were not exactly wired to be like totally objective.
Yeah, we're emotional creatures.
Yeah, we've got all these biases and things that like kind of steer us towards information that already sits with what we believe.
It's that confirmation bias. It's like our brains are always looking for that evidence to support our existing beliefs.
Which I guess makes sense on some level, right? Like it's comfortable,
Mhm.
but it also means we're like kind of stuck in these, what the article calls echo chambers.
Oh, yeah, the echo chambers. That's a perfect analogy. You're just hearing your own beliefs bounced back at you.
Exactly. And the article talks about how the longer we stay in those echo chambers, the harder it is to even recognize other points of view.
You're not even exposed to them.
Yeah. And that's where I guess critical thinking comes in.
Absolutely. Critical thinking is like our, defense against the echo chamber. It's the ability to look at information objectively and, not just jump to conclusions based on our emotions.
So it's like taking a step back and saying, okay, let's look at the evidence.
Exactly. And it's not just about the evidence that supports our beliefs, but also the evidence that might challenge them.
That's the hard part.
Right. But the article makes this point that, it's intellectually lazy to just dismiss ideas we don't like without actually considering the evidence.
So even those like far out ideas that we might think are crazy, we should still like try to apply critical thinking.
Exactly. We should at least try to understand where they're coming from, and maybe in the process, we learn something.
It's like, don't just blindly follow the crowd, but also don't automatically reject everything that's different, right?
Exactly. Both extremes can be dangerous. The real key is to, think for yourself. Don't just accept what you're told, but don't just reject it either.
It's that middle ground.
Yep.
And that's where I think curiosity comes in, right? Because the article talks about how curiosity is like the engine of true knowledge. It's that desire to keep learning and growing.
It's what pushes us to explore new ideas and challenge old ones.
And the article actually lists 3 like signs of a real truth seeker.
Oh, what are those?
Okay, so number 1, they're willing to consider different viewpoints.
Like open-minded.
Yeah, open-minded. Then they're okay with saying, I don't know, especially when things are complex. Like they don't need to have all the answers.
That's humility.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then the third one is they're open to changing their minds when new information comes along.
Which I'll admit can be tough.
Oh, tell me about it. Like, I remember this one time I found out that something I had believed for like years was actually totally wrong.
Oh, no.
And, at first I was like a little embarrassed, but then I was like, you know what? It's okay to be wrong sometimes. It's how we learn.
It's a sign of growth. You were able to update your understanding.
Yeah, and honestly, it felt really good to like finally have the right information.
It's liberating.
Totally. Okay, so the article also gets into some like real world examples of how this plays out.
Yeah.
And it uses what it calls the freedom movement.
Okay, I'm familiar with that term.
Yeah, so basically the article's saying that within these groups, sometimes people tend to rely more on emotional reasoning than actual facts.
Yeah, they let feelings guide their arguments.
Right. And the article's saying that, while it's important to be passionate about what you believe in, it can be a problem when we prioritize feeling right over actually being right.
It can shut down any productive conversation. You're not really listening to the other side.
Exactly. And it can also, like, make it harder to build trust and credibility, right? Because people are like, okay, well, if you're not even willing to look at the facts.
Right. They start to question everything you say.
So what can we do to avoid falling into that trap ourselves? Like, how can we make sure we're approaching conversations in a way that is, like, grounded in evidence and logic?
Well, luckily the article gives us some practical advice.
Ooh, I love practical advice.
So it has these 3 steps for building a solid foundation of truth.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first one is question everything. And it means start by questioning your own beliefs, especially the ones you feel really strongly about.
So, like, don't just assume that what you believe is true. Actually, like, dig into it.
Yeah, look for evidence, consider alternative viewpoints, and be open to the possibility that you might be wrong.
Okay, that makes sense. What's number 2?
Number 2 is evaluate the evidence. Don't just take headlines or social media posts at face value.
So, like, do your own research.
Exactly. Go deeper. Find the original source of the information, look at the actual data, and be critical of what you find.
Don't believe everything you read.
Right. And then the third step is stay humble.
Ooh, humility. That's a good one.
Yeah, so much of this is about recognizing that we don't know everything. And that's okay.
It's like, be open to learning from other people, even if you don't agree with them.
Exactly. There's always something new to learn.
You know, what really struck me about this whole article was that it really frames this whole truth-seeking thing as a journey, not a destination.
Yeah, it's ongoing.
Yeah, like, you're never going to get to a point where you know everything. It's about constantly questioning, learning, and, like, refining your understanding of the world.
And that's what makes it so exciting.
Totally. So, listeners, as we wrap up this deep dive, we want to leave you with a question to ponder. What's one deeply held belief that you're willing to examine more critically?
It could be something big or small.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your reflections with us on social media.
We're all on this journey together.
Thanks for joining us.